In terms of storyline games in 2024, y'all, we are spoiled. Spoiled. We have so many games with juice around them leading into that game. I want to unpack those right now. But, y'all, week 1 starts with a bang. Miami at Florida. I don't know if you need – I don't know if there's a – I mean, Paul Feinbaum said it. He believes that's the most important game in college football in 2024. And, I understand if you disagree, but I would think you have a hard time making your case because you look at everything going into this game. It's in the state of Florida. It's two massive brands that have an illustrious history. It's a rivalry game. They're playing for bragging rights. They're also playing for pole position when it comes to being able to get the upper leg on the recruiting trail in terms of the pitch you can make in living rooms. The big part of this, too, it is a pivotal year 3 for both Mario Cristobal and for Billy Napier. The thing we say on this show, man, it is a show-me year for both sides. It's a show-me year. Because if you're Mario Cristobal, you've trended the right direction. You've built your roster. I think the culture's in a good place now. Like it is now your show. Same thing for Billy Napier. When he got there, you could say, hey, there's no way this boat's going to float, man. We got too many holes in it from a roster level, probably from an operation level. Like we can't get this thing out into the water just yet. And oh, by the way, the water is the SEC. So what I'm trying to say here is now by year 3 for either side, there's no more excuses. There's no more, oh, we're going to do this. It's like year 3 is you go out and do it, and it starts in that first game of the season. I'll tell you what, whatever happens in this game, the overreaction that happens for either fan base, I mean, it's going to be. I had somebody on Twitter in my mentions say this, and I think they hit it on the head. Post-game Twitter from this one is going to be cinematic. Like, grab your popcorn, get your snacks. It's going to be wild. Because if Mario Cristobal loses to Billy Napier, folks are going to say, oh, my gosh, it's supposed to be year 3. We got Cam Ward at quarterback. We hit the portal. And for what? And for what? We can't beat Billy Napier. Their over-under win total is 4.5. If Billy Napier loses to Mario Cristobal, they're going to say, we were at home. It's year 3. Are you kidding me? How are we dealing with this right now? How are we still having excuses for why we can't win the big game at home against a team in state? They went 7-5 last year. We can't beat a team from the ACC. That's been our calling card for a long time, is that if you put us in another conference, we would run things. And we lost to that team? I'm just telling you, both have a case to be made. Neither side is a complete story. Like week 1 does not define you. That 12-game season is what defines you. And I think this season will define both sides in a lot of ways. But if you win this game, both sides are saying, well, how good could we be then? Like, hey, we walked into the swamp, one of the toughest places to play in college football. We took that thing over. Walk in your stadium, take over your stadium. How good could we be? That was Cam Ward's first game. Like, he's only going to get better from here. All right? Like, if you were going to beat us, you were going to slow this offense down, it was going to happen in this game. In week 1, when we're all still trying to gel for the first time in a real game, in a game scenario, not game-like scenario, in a game scenario. For Florida, you're saying, all right, that team's supposed to be a college football playoff team. That team is maybe supposed to win the ACC, or at least be in contention for it. How good could we be? So there's going to be an overreaction on either side, but I think the fact that it's year 3 and there is such a intense standard on both sides, it's going to be a lot of fun. So the storyline there is obvious and tremendous and poetic, and we love everything about it. Speaking of intense storylines, I don't know that we have a more intense storyline than Tennessee going to Norman, Oklahoma in week 4 of the college football season, so we don't got to wait long, y'all. All right, we don't have to wait too long. Josh Heupel returning to his alma mater, a place where he was the Heisman Trophy runner-up, a place where he brought a national title back to, also a place where he coached on staff and did not have his contract renewed. Just let that sink in for a second. This is a place that he took to a national championship as a quarterback, where he went to school, where he essentially grew into an adult, had the most formative years of his life, probably some of the best memories of his life. Goes and coaches there, doesn't get his contract renewed as a co-OC. I don't care how out of touch you are with your emotions or how much you claim to be unemotional. I'm not speaking of Josh Heupel now. I'm just saying for the human race as a whole. if you have a history at a certain place with a lot of positive memories and it ends on a sour note, you go work somewhere, it ends on a sour note, and then you see that individual back in another competitive setting, you don't think you want to beat the ever-living brakes off of them? And I'm not even telling you this with any intel or insight. Like, I'm just saying, from a human nature standpoint, this game, I have to believe, for Josh Heupel, using human logic will be supercharged emotionally. They're going to want this one. And for Oklahoma, like, it's not lacking storylines either. First game in the SEC. You've been told for so long now how the SEC is going to chew you up and spit you out. You're over under win total 7.5. You got Tennessee walking in there. They're a sleeper college football playoff team. And the crowd's at your back. I'll call our shot right now, too. I'd be surprised if we don't get this one as a night game, if we don't get this one for College game day. Like, this should be the game of that week. It's going to be intense. It's going to be supercharged. Now, it's also just a massive game for either side when it comes to what they want to accomplish in 2024. It's got swing game written all over it. Both sides, I think, could be 3-0 walking into it. And for Nico, if you go get a win on the road in SEC play, go to 4-0, that'd do a lot for your confidence. And confidence and momentum and belief for a young quarterback now, that can go a long way carrying you out throughout the rest of the season. For Oklahoma, they will be 3-0, I believe. They go to Auburn the week after this game. Talking about momentum, talking about wanting to hit the over on that 7.5 win total. You're at 4-0 after the first month of the season. Like, vibes would be pretty high. So massive implications for their 2024 aspirations for both sides, and emotionally, especially for Josh Heupel, the return to Norman. It's going to be a fun one. That is going to be a lot of fun. Another fun game, man, week 6. This is on par with the Josh Heupel return to Norman. Clemson at Florida State, or as I like to call it, the DJU Bowl. And DJ Uiagalelei, man, God bless him, when he pivoted out of his time at Clemson, he said all of the right things. I mean, even after the game where he was benched during the regular season, I believe Clemson had to come back against, it might have been Notre Dame. I'm blanking on who exactly it was against. But they had to respond against somebody. It might have been Syracuse, actually. I think it was Syracuse. They're playing, DJU gets benched after playing a large portion of the game. Kate Klubnik comes in, they win the game. The thing I want to emphasize here again, DJU said all of the right things. Said, hey, I get it. Coach had to give somebody else a chance. I'm paraphrasing here, but he was an adult about the whole situation. He gets to go and play his former team that more or less, by nature of how they treated that situation, decided somebody else was better fit for his job. Even in the ACC title game, the same thing happened. Again, I understand that you're going to say all the right things. You're going to put on this, not front, but you're going to have this persona of keeping it all about the game. That's what competitive people do with a good head on their shoulders, which I believe DJU is. But you can't tell me it doesn't mean something to him. Can't tell me he wouldn't relish in the idea of walking off that field throwing for 3 or 4 touchdowns against a team and a coach that told him he wasn't good enough to start for them. And again, I don't think that Dabo Swinney has any ill will towards DJU either. I think Dabo Swinney and DJU have a great relationship. But I do think when it comes to the strictly competitive side of things, DJU would love to get this one. Would love to get this one. And I'll say this, I think this game will help kind of craft the narrative too around DJU's time at Clemson. Because originally the thought was, hey, DJU, 5-star, goes to Clemson, doesn't have the success of a Trevor Lawrence, must not really be that good. Swing and a miss for DJU, that's too bad. And then he leaves and the offense actually gets worse. And DJU also, I believe, spoke to The Athletic and said, hey, I wasn't crazy about what we were doing offensively. It's just my 2 cents. They've switched. They have since pivoted offensive staff since then. But I think the narrative now is slowly starting to turn a little bit to where it was all on DJU, and now it's kind of like, well, who was it on actually? Like it was one-sided, and now I think it's a little bit more open for discussion. If DJ Uiagalelei trots out there in week 6 in Tallahassee, throws for 3 touchdowns, 300-ish yards, carves up Clemson's defense, which, again, I think is going to be a really good defense. How does that narrative change? I think you go from pointing the finger at DJU to pointing the finger a little bit more towards Clemson. And I'm not saying there's a right answer there. I'm just saying, whether it's fair or not, the narrative around his time at Clemson will be crafted in some way based on this game. Also, take the DJU stakes out of it and what he has personally at stake, if you're buying into that storyline. This is huge for both sides. This is huge when it comes to the inside track to get into Charlotte. So massive game from a macro level, massive game from a storyline level. And I don't think Dabo or DJU would tell you this, but I do believe that DJU would love to beat his former team. Yes, because it's a competitive football game that matters on the win-loss record, but I also just everybody loves to be able to get one over on someone that told them, hey, you weren't good enough. I'll just leave it at that. Last one here, and this is an obvious one. It's fairly one-sided here. Michigan at Ohio State. Now, for Michigan, I'll be honest, the storyline juice, outside of it being, the greatest rivalry in college football, excluding Army-Navy, there's not a ton there. Because Sharon Moore's walking in. It's his first year as the head coach. Michigan's replacing a lot. Michigan in a lot of ways coming off a national championship. The pressure, I think, is a good bit lower than it has been in the previous games. Also worth noting, Michigan, they could lose to Ohio State, and if they're 10-1 going into that game, might have a chance to make the college football playoff. That's neither here nor there. The storyline is really one-sided. It's all on Ryan Day. And the reason why this storyline is so massive is because you and I have talked about this. Other people have talked about this game specifically, not just Ryan Day, and we're sitting here in June. This has been a talking point for a long time. Can he beat Michigan? And the feeling is, if you can't beat Michigan this season, when's it going to happen? Because every single variable going into this game is favoring Ohio State. It's favoring Ryan Day. One, it's in Columbus. Two, you have the Monstars on your roster. Three, you have the experience. There's nothing that Ohio State can point to and say, yeah, that might be a problem for us. There's nothing there that I'm looking at right now and saying this is going to be Ohio State's Achilles heel. So if they don't get it done this year, if Ohio State loses, and we've said this before, I think things just get progressively more toxic. Now, I will say this again. If Ohio State loses, the answer is not fire Ryan Day. That's my opinion. However, I don't think that my opinion is the majority when it comes to how people feel in Columbus should they lose to Michigan for the fourth year in a row. All I'm saying. But at what point, too, if it's so toxic, do you just say, hey, man, and this is speaking from Ryan Day's perspective, I go 11-1, and my approval rating it could not be lower. It could not be lower. I am just being told what I am not as a head coach, and I win nearly every single game that I coach. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. At what point do you just say, hey, thanks, but no thanks, Ohio State. I'm going to go coach for X, Y, and Z other college football team. Hey, NFL, maybe I'll go, do something with y'all. I'm not saying it happens. I'm saying that discussion, I think, maybe gets a little bit more traction. But let's talk about the positive potential outcome here. Because if Ryan Day beats Michigan, the storylines will be, has Ryan Day put it together? Did Ryan Day get Ohio State over the hump? Credit to Ryan Day, and this is genuine. If they beat Michigan, credit Ryan Day for the way that he has evolved and adapted as a head coach and delegated the play calling and got a new defensive coordinator a couple years ago and attacked the portal. He deserves a lot of credit if they do get over the hump. And this is one thing we've said for a while here. Keep that same energy around Ryan Day that you had when he was losing to Michigan and all the hyperbolic statements we were saying about him then. Make sure that we give him his flowers if he does beat Michigan. Just so we're on the same page there. Now, something to consider within this game, too, there's a chance we see it again in a week's time. We could see this game, they could run it back for the Big Ten championship. So, yes, that would probably also provide some juice to it. And if Ohio State loses to Michigan, again, I don't know that I would be surprised if they were still in the college football playoff. 10-2 Ohio State, for my money, is getting in. If Ohio State loses and then goes on a run in the college football playoff, heck, they win the national championship, well, then the discussion becomes a little bit different. But regardless, a lot of good storylines on deck for us in 2024. Man, I cannot wait for it. Cannot wait for it. Let me know in the comment section, what is the game you are most looking forward to from a storyline perspective in 2024?
Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.